Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 20 of the I Rock Knits podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Happy Memorial Day, and a great big thank you and salute for those veterans who have given the ultimate sacrifice to provide me my freedom. It's a special day, right? We've gotten home from the lake, and we call it a lake, but we are up north in Minnesota. I'm coming to you from the southwest corner of the Twin Cities, where I live with my husband, my dog, and soon-to-be daughter who graduated from college, and that is a part of Corey's stories today. But this last weekend, we were up on Lake Winnebagosh, and it is 5 hours north of us, right after the mouth of the Mississippi starts. And so we are actually on the river part that right as it widens into the lake. So we're a little bit secluded because the lake is huge, and so it can get really windy and scary to be out on the boat. But it's great fishing, and and it's really good knitting. I took 4 projects for 3 days and only worked on one, but if something goes wrong with that one, you better have backups, right? I am knitting the Rail Trail sweater. I posted a picture on Instagram. It's an all-over colorwork sweater out of Jill Draper Make Stuff, and I got pretty far. So I sat in the cabin. I didn't go out. It rained off and on. It was cloudy off and on. There were some really nice times, but it wasn't consistent. I don't love to fish. I'd rather knit in the boat or read a book in the boat, and so I didn't go out at all. My husband just goes out and has a phone and a life jacket, and I just wait for him to come back in, and I've still been knitting the whole time he's gone. And I slept in, he gets up really early and goes out. He's an early riser. I'm a late nighter. So we got back, but tons and tons of laundry, because you have to take, that's the sump pump draining, which has been going nonstop here in Minnesota because we've had so much rain. Yeah, gosh, it was a really nice time to get away, but it's a lot of work to pack up and get ready to go because we're staying in a housekeeping cabin, which means you can make all your own meals. They have a little store and there's a hangout area in the lodge, but we don't spend too much time up there. So coming home, you got to unpack all the food you didn't use and then pick up the dog from what we call the pound. It's the daycare or whatever, the kennel. So I had to go pick him up, and then he stunk. So he needed a bath because, they've been playing for 3 days with other dogs and running in the grass. And I don't think they got to go in the pool. Maybe they did on Saturday. I didn't ask her. I should have, because I know that they were going to try to open the dog pool this weekend. So it's fancy schmancy kennel, but not super expensive and quite close to our home. So we love that. Well, today I want to say hello to some people. I got a big list. All of these people reached out to me in the last 2 weeks since the last podcast and made a comment or asked a question or gave a book recommendation. I just want to thank all of you for that. So here we go. Carey, Walden, Susan Wright, Beverly, Bullock, Beverly, Fauth. I have 2 Beverlys and I'm keeping them straight now. Emma Butcher, Irene from the 3-Ply podcast reached out again. So nice of her. Knit Takes 2. Hi. Gloria Farmer, Kristen Peterson, heard from her before with these hands. And she was really funny because she said, after my Corey stories last week of getting stuck and not being able to squat and waddle, she said waddle on. So I think at the end of my podcast, when I say keep it colorful, I'm also going to say waddle on, right? Andrea, Ribera, Helen, Paxford, Kelly, and Angela. I know both of you in real life quite well. Helen, Beth, Mary Sens-Azara, Melanie, hi Mel, I know her well, and Amber reached out and made a comment to my podcast this week. Was that nice of her? I mean, it's not like I don't talk to her all the time, but that was really nice of her. Amanda Cole, Morninglory, Wisconsin. Beth Gerdes, I'm not sure. Debbie M, I have a couple of Debbies, so Debbie M. Andi Pharis, hi Andi, I've talked to you before. Nora Brown, Maggies Grace, Debbie Whitehead, there's the other Debbie. One's with an IE and one's with the, they're both, no, I have another one coming that doesn't have an IE, I think. Trying to keep everybody straight, even though I don't know all of you in real life. Okay, now I have to tell you what I just did. I bought a new gadget to hold my iPad. So I can bump the table, bump, 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 and it won't move. I have it attached to a bench in front of me, and I just kicked the bench. All that work to get this thing set up and figured out, and then I've got to be careful now to not swing my feet under the table. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. Carolyn McLaughlin, let's move on. Cindy Haub, Sabrena Shelton, Jackie May, Sue Carey, Rita Wood, Melinda Z. Russo, Amy Mickelson, Amy Blandford. I have a lot of Amy's as well. So hi, both of you. Stephanie Haberman, Peggy Bork, Ann Morris, Kathy Goodman. Thanks for your comment. I like talking to Kathy every week. Marilyn Wallace. So many of you have made comments before, and you're coming back and continuing to comment. And that is so nice, because that takes time. It takes time to stop what you're doing and go over there and make a little comment. So what am I wearing today? Well, I have on my stars and stripes it's just a comfortable kind of pull over has a little elastic waist. I bought a bunch of them last summer, and it was comfortable because we needed to shower and get all cleaned up when we got home. I am wearing the number 20 cropped cardigan, and it looks like it was that cotton held double, Classic Elite Provence cotton held double, and it's from Vogue Knitting Spring Summer 2005. It is still available on Ravelry. There it is. It's supposed to be cropped. I made mine longer. They featured one of mine. I made a ton of these because they work up really fast. I have a short sleeved one and 2 long sleeved ones. I wear them all the time in the summer because you can see they're really open in area. That you make these bobbles around the top, or you don't. You can make them long sleeve or short sleeve. It was just an easy, quick knit. And, I can grab them. I call them backdoor coats, backdoor sweaters, because you grab them as you go out the back door to go to a movie or out to dinner, because it's going to be air conditioned in the summer and you just are going to need something on your shoulders. So I made red, yellow, and blue. I still wear them all the time, although I probably made them, I'm going to say 10 years ago. Anyway. So that's that one. It's still available on Ravelry for a download of $7. It comes in 3 sizes, 34 and a half, 38 and a half, and 42 and a half. Elite Yarns Provence. That's probably how I found it and how I made it, because we've talked about that before, but that's one of my favorite cottons. It just washes up really well. It's got some shine to it. It's Egyptian cotton. It had a good price point with a big put up. So holding this double made it kind of a bulky, Aaron to bulky, and it calls for DK held double, I think, in the pattern. It's been many years, but I think that's what it called for. So anyway, that's what I'm wearing today. If I get warm, I'll take it off, okay? All right, several of you reached out this week to give me an idea for what to call my sweater and shawl segment. So I'm still keeping a running list on those and trying to decide what will roll off the tongue. We've got some audiobooks to go over today. I have a question from a viewer. I love it when you guys ask questions. It really, that must be a teacher thing too, because when you are teaching a lesson and then students ask questions, you realize where you've also made a hole, right? Like you have not explained things adequately or correctly, or somebody doesn't get it. And I hate moving forward as a teacher when not everyone's with me. So if I'm saying something and you don't get it, you're not understanding it. I mean, I'm a fast talker. I'm not for everybody. I'm not slow and thoughtful and methodical. Can you imagine? Hi, welcome to I Rock Knits podcast. So glad you're here. Right? There are just people who can do that so well, and I love watching some of those podcasts. It's not me. So if I'm barreling over you, give me a shout out to say, hey, I didn't understand this. You went too fast, or could you explain it in another way? Because as a teacher, that's how you learn. That's how you prepare to be a better presenter is to know how to give information in multiple ways. Some of you won't get it audio, through your ears. You won't understand it because that's not the way you learn. And so sometimes you need to see it, and you need to do it, and you need to hear, all those modalities. So please keep reaching out and asking me questions, because I'll answer them in the comments for you as soon as I see them. Sometimes I get a little behind. There's a lot of you talking to me, so I get a little behind. Sometimes I don't remember to go back to a couple threads because I've answered all the questions on YouTube or the comments. So thanks so much for just hanging out with me, and then also engaging, right? That's the best part of doing this. So the question, where did I put her little slip? I printed it. This comes from Textile Grad. So I'm guessing that she has a background in fabric, possibly yarn. But her question says something very nice about the podcast, and then she says, I hear you mention that a skein has X yards / meters in 50 or 100 grams based on the yarn label, and then identify the weight classification of the yarn, bulky, worsted, DK, etc. There seems to be some sort of relationship you are making between the classification in yards to 100 grams. Can you provide a source for making that kind of determination? Well, up until this point, the source has been my brain. Because just over time, you kind of learn the weights of yarn. I used to have a little index card where I cut out from something I printed off the internet or found in a magazine, the weights of yarn and kind of how many stitches you could get to 1 inch or to 4 inches on it, because I couldn't keep it straight. I couldn't keep lace, sport, fingering, DK, Aran, bulky. Like I didn't know how that kind of went. But I knew that there was a source out there, so I found it for you, and you might have already seen it because I put a link on the Ravelry page, and I'll also put this in the show notes. Remember, I have good show notes. I spend a lot of time after every podcast making sure that I write down everything that I've talked about. So here is the link, or the page that I found it at, the Crafty Jackalope. And here is all the information. So how I'm explaining this situation is that, and I'm going to do it with fingering weight first, and then we'll move on. So a fingering weight skein, 100 grams, which is about 3.5 ounces. Usually that's the put up that someone can get from the mill, can be purchased in different yardage amounts depending on the mill. So with fingering weight, used to be one skein fingering weight 400 yards. That's what it was every time. So you would know without even having to look at the gauge all the time. If you picked up a skein of yarn off the shelf and you looked at it and it said 400 yards, you knew that you were looking at a fingering weight skein because that was the industry standard. Now we have mills from all over, and we have dyers buying yarn on cones and buying yarn in giant put-ups and winding it off themselves in order to dye it. So we can get a put-up of 380 yards, 420 yards, 438 yards, 463 yards. So I can pick up a skein of yarn at the yarn store and find this kind of wide number of yards per 100 grams and not always know exactly what I'm looking at. Because if you start looking at 463 yards, that's going to be a lot skinnier yarn for the 100 yards than the 380, right? So on this sheet, if I go to, and it's listed, the standard yard weights are listed for each weight of yarn. So fingering here says for a 50 gram ball, it's approximately 185 to 230 yards per 50 gram ball. That's also a problem when you go to a yarn store. If you pick up a 50 gram ball or a 100 gram ball. So you have to, you have to double the number if you're trying to figure it out. And 370 to 460 yards per 100 gram ball. So in my mind, what I talk about a lot, and when I'm talking to my friends at knitting group, is what put up of yarn are you working with to make that shawl? Because there's a vast difference there. If you're knitting on, I don't like to knit socks on 463. And that's what I was talking about with my friend Renee. I think I mentioned her. She was specifically looking for thicker fingering weight yarn, which seems like it's kind of an oxymoron. But she just didn't want the skinny stuff, right? Because it's a lot more knitting and you have to almost usually go down a needle size. So if you have different weights of fingering weight yarn in your stash and you knit socks on all of it and you feel like your gauge is fluctuating, it might not be you. It might just be the yarn. The weight and the yardage on that skein the yarn might be significantly thinner or fatter. And then that's when we start to get some overlap. So if I move up to sport weight, so that would be the next heaviest yarn, it says 100 well, I'm not going to do the 50 grams, okay? Let's just do the 100 grams. 290 yards to 360 yards. So that's the parameter that you could probably find in a 100 gram ball of sport weight yarn. Now, that 360 can overlap with that 370 in a fingering weight skein, right? Those two are pretty close together. So that's where things can get confusing when the two overlap. The 360 and the 370. The 360 sport is on the upper end of the sport weights as far as weight goes, and the 370 fingering is on the lower end of the fingerings as far as, yardage goes. So they get really close together. They used to be far more delineated because we didn't have as many people with mills. Most people were sourcing from the same place. And now we have more people winding off their own. And you've seen that on Instagram before, if you're on Instagram, right? Maybe even Facebook, where people are winding off of cones and they are setting the meterage or the yardage, and they're just winding off to a certain number before they dye it. And they can change that. They can make that whatever they want. And so at first, I think we used to think, oh my gosh, 463 yards, that's awesome. I get 63 more yards of yarn on this skein. You do, in the sense that it's more yardage, but it still weighs 100 grams. So you're still paying for the same weight. And there are some yarn dyers who go over on their weights. So they never have a 100 gram ball. They always go over to like 102, 103, sometimes 105. Occasionally, I've even seen 110 grams of yarn on a skein. So that's another reason to weigh your yarn before you start. Because if you have extra, then you know that you can make it longer than what it calls for. And we didn't used to think that we needed to do that to weigh a yarn ball before we started actually knitting with it. So I hope that helped. I hope I'm more clear about why I talk about that so much is just because it's not consistent anymore. There doesn't seem to be the same industry standard. And so on this website, the Crafty Jackalope, I'm going to assume it's a she, but I could be wrong about that. That's pretty sexist to say that, Corey. So they have listed out the wraps per inch, because that's the way that you can tell the thickness of the yarn, is by wrapping it around a stick or a ruler and then seeing how many wraps you can get in 1 inch when you wrap it side by side by side by side. That's really hard to do and be super accurate, because if you push those together, you can sometimes get an extra wrap in, or if you spread them out just a tad. So I don't usually like to go with that, although spinners will use wraps per inch far more often. And then it has the stitch count that you can expect to get, like in fingering weight, you can get 7 to 8 stitches per inch. So that's a way of looking at what weight of yarn it is, and possibly on what size needle. And then she also has what recommended needle size, hook size, all that kind of stuff. So this is a really nice reference, and she's got it up on the internet. So I could show it to you here. Worsted Is it focusing? Maybe I should need to pull back a little. 10 to 11 wraps per inch, 4.75 to 5.25 stitches per inch, 100 and 150 grams per 50, 200 or yards per 50, sorry, 200 and 250 for, so there you go. Crafty jackalope, go print it out. You will love it. I will put the link in the show notes. You can just click right over, but it was the first thing that came up when I put in standard yarn, weights, and yardage or something like that. It came up right at the top because I knew that there was stuff out there. I've just been using it out of my head, which is not anything that you need to memorize. We just talk about it a lot. I talk about it a lot, so I hope that helps. I printed out a little thing that I found on the internet the other day, and Fabulous Yarn, which has kind of a daily deal on their website for yarn, which I get in my email, had the Ultimate Angora. It's Bella Angora on sale for $11.99. The reason that I say that is because if any of you had ever considered making the Nice Capades sweater from the Minnesota 52 book, it's the one with the snowflakes around the yoke. This is the yarn that I used to make the snowflakes fuzzy. So there were several yarns you could use, but this one is one of the ones that I had in my stash. It also makes beautiful baby hats and baby booties because they're just fuzzy as all get out. So it was on sale. I thought, oh, that's some of the yarn that we used in the yoke for make the snowflakes look kind of soft edged. Was that Bella Angora. So I thought I would just tell you all about it on Fabulous Yarn. Okay, what is the sweater of the day? We're gonna turn this way a little bit today. The sweater of the day is the Foxy sweater. Can you see the foxes? Not always. It looks on the camera like they're very distinct, but not always can people in real life see the foxes. And then once they see them and figure out where the tail is, then they can't unsee them. It's that optical illusion thing, which is kind of fun. So I printed out the pattern information for you to look at here. It's the Foxy sweater by Natalia Moreva. And my friend Stacy, hi Stacy, and I fell in love with this sweater when we first saw it, and went over to her pattern page to see about knitting it. And Stacy knit it very quickly first. I think she wore it to Rhinebeck a year before I wore mine to Rhinebeck, if I remember correctly. But I think it was Stacy the one that gave me fair warning that this sweater is only written for one size, small, medium. So Natalia is Russian. Some of her pattern information is in Russian, and so my assumption at the time is that she didn't really plan to write this up as a sweater. So Natalia does mitten designs. If you want a pair of mittens that are just amazing, look at that. Colorwork mittens. I could have printed 100 from her website, because she's just got, if you want to put something on the back of a mitten, an animal, a symbol, she probably has something for it. She's got cats and owls and seahorse and snapdragon and butterfly and anything, horse. She has it on the back of a mitten, and then it's just a chart, right? You have to, her expectation is that you have some skill around knowing how to knit, and then she gives you the stitch counts, and then here's the chart for what the hand looks like, and then you can just knit it from the chart. So there are tons of those out there, but her intention probably was never to write up a sweater pattern, especially in English, because she probably just took this box off of a mitten pattern and then made herself a sweater, posted it on Ravelry. People asked for the pattern and she said there isn't one, but I can write out the recipe, which is what she did. It's kind of that when I got it, it was kind of in paragraph form, was just kind of written out what she had done. And so I knew enough about sweater design and sizing for myself that, and Stacy too, we decided that if we made it in a bigger size, wanted to make a bigger size, we would just up the yarn weight. So the original one I think is done in fingering, and then she recommends that to get a bigger size, you go up to sport or DK weight yarn. So then our next thought was, well, then we would go up to worsted weight yarn to get more like a large size, and that's what we did. So hers was originally knit on size 3 and 4 needles, and we ended up going to worsted weight. I knit mine in Sun Valley Fibers. It's a lovely yarn, and she had just the right palette, I thought, for the foxes and the motifs to be done on that. This also has a motif at the bottom here, if I can lift it up here. So you've got the trees and the motif at the bottom that repeats here. And then we had to figure out how wide this repeat was from here, the widest point here to here, and add one in. So we knew what we needed to cast on for the bottom. We had to figure out this repeat, that repeat, and figured that we could fit, 2 trees and 1 fox extra on the worsted weight version. So although I have people stop me all the time and say that they love the sweater and that they would like to knit it and where's the pattern, I always have to give the caveat that it's hard to knit. I mean, I have detailed notes on my project page, and I went out yesterday and I think there were 40 projects on it now. And so there are other people who have lots of projects. Someone's made it as a cardigan for a child, or kind of a grown child. They had matching ones, mother-daughter. Several people did it in a lot of different colors. So there is more information out there. But the confusing part of this yesterday for me was when I went to Natalia's designer page on Ravelry, there was a note that says, my Ravelry store is closed. You can find all my old and new patterns on my own website. And then there are specials and announcements on her Facebook page. Stacy did the first one, I think, and made some comments back to her. And so there's a note at the bottom of the page about some changes that she made to the pattern after Stacy knit it. But there's another note on that page that says Ravelry has taken her off of. It's kind of sounded like they forced her off of Ravelry. I don't know what happened there. I have never heard that someone has gotten removed from Ravelry. So I have no idea. I would like to know the background on that. But I went to her website and everything's there. So to me, it sounded like they had removed her, but maybe she just removed herself. Maybe she just didn't want to pay the Ravelry and the PayPal fees, which cost designers every time they sell a pattern. So when you pay $4, $5, or $6 for a pattern, it costs the designer a percentage of that amount for every one they sell that they have to give to Ravelry, and then they have to pay to PayPal because that's how everybody checks out. So you might think that a $6 or $7 pattern is a lot of money because we've gone up from kind of that traditional $5 pattern, but part of that is Ravelry and PayPal take fees. And it's a wonderful platform to use, but you have to pay for it, which is only fair. So you can go to Kulabra, Kulabra, designs.com. Or you can go to Ravelry where this link is and just click through if you want to see all of her mitten patterns and you want to see the other Foxy sweaters. They're still on Ravelry. That has not been taken down. But as of May 1st, none of her patterns are available on Ravelry anymore. She only has them available on her website, which looked like it was fully functioning, and there a number of them were on sale for $3, $4, and $5. Some of them were a little bit more. But the sweater is knitted bottom up. Everything is in the round. There are 2 tiny underarm seams that need to be sewn with a recommended gauge, which obviously we changed. The sweater, she has the sweater measurements on the page. The sleeves are quite long because she likes them that way. The pattern explains how to make them shorter if you want. She did waist shaping. what else is on here? And she also gives the amounts of yarn that you need to do each section or part. So I mean, you can get the information you need. And if you have ever knit a sweater and upsized it before, this was not that difficult to add just an entire fox as the repeat. And with 40 patterns out there and everybody probably making notes, because they weren't all just small people that were knitting it, you could probably get it. I think it is one of my top 3 sweaters that I've ever made. I just wear it all the time. The yarn is luscious. The colors are just striking in person. And it was very fun to knit. I would make another one with a different motif in it from her. She's got, other motifs for a couple of other sweaters out there. So yeah, it's just a good resource for you to go look at. Okay, that's the Foxy sweater by Natalia Moreva. Next, let's do the shawl, right? I had a couple of cute ideas for the shawl. That's a wrap. Isn't that cute? Except I never do it at the end, so I thought, no, maybe that's not as good as it could be. Okay, today's shawl is the Citron shawl by Hilary Smith Callis. And I used to always say Hilary Smith Calais, and I don't know why, but I heard a podcaster recently say Callis, and I thought, oh, maybe I've been saying that wrong all along. And there was not a pronunciation key on Ravelry when I went out to look, so I couldn't double check myself. But this is from Knitty Winter of 2009, so it's a free pattern, which is awesome. And this is what she says about it. As this little shawlette was taking shape, I couldn't help but notice a resemblance to a slice of citrus due to its semicircular shape and increases subtly radiating from the center, with its bit of ruffle and ruching, and especially its reference to my favorite of the California winter crops. I knew I would be wearing this wintry fruit accessory to each and every holiday party this year. Well, when I saw it, the reason that I decided to knit it is because I had this yarn in my stash and didn't have anything to make out of it. So it calls for a lace weight, which means basically that she's just looking for you to have a light fingering or lace weight yarn, and you can make it in any weight yarn. It'll just turn out bigger. I made the small size and was not very happy when I was done with it because it didn't turn out big enough at the time. I needed to have a permanent closure put in it in order to wear it. Now I just throw it over a dress and I can go out the door because the permanent closure is in there. And this is one of those plastic jewel closures. It has the little thing on the back where you screw it through the fabric and then it just stays in this shawl permanently. So I think I had a skein of yarn that was maybe 500 or 550 yards or something. So I thought, oh, it'll turn out big enough, but the ruching caused it to not grow as much as I thought. So I'm going to turn this around. You can see the back. There's the ruching that happens. So you're knitting stockinette and then you're increasing knit front back, knit front back, knit front back, knit front back, and then you're knitting some rows and then you're doing it again. So you get this, and I think you decrease it back down by half, and then you knit another stockinette section, and then you increase, do some of the ruche section, and it makes this really fun. That's what that's called, ruched, R-U-C-H-E-D. Used to make it on little girls' dresses back in the day. You used to ruche fabric when you were a seamstress or a sewer. So this is the pattern. It's called Citron. See how pretty it is in that window where you can see through that section? Yeah, really pretty. The original one was knit with Malabrigo lace. It calls for 24 stitches to 4 inches, so 6 stitches to the inch on a size 6, and the yardage is for 470 yards. However, you can just continue to make it bigger and bigger. There are some giant ones out on Ravelry in the pictures. It was available for free. It came out in December of 2009. It really makes a cute cowl too if you wrap it around like this. Isn't that cute? She just has it up around her neck. I found that one to be really cute. And then this one is where you really see the ruched sections and the bind off. So I wear quite a bit. I just put it on the mannequin here. It can pull down. It could be a little longer. So maybe to your waist in the back, but the front isn't as big as I would have liked. But I didn't have any more yarn, so it's not. I wouldn't call it a shawlette. I mean, she did, but it's not that small where it just barely covers your shoulders. That kind of thing. It's bigger than that. So the finished length of the straight edge is 34 inches and the height at the center is 14 inches. So for those of you that are shawl knitters that look at those kind of numbers all the time, that might help you, 34 and 14 for those widths and measurements. Okay, so that's Citron by Hilary Smith Callis. Okay, let's talk briefly about some audiobooks. I wanted to finish my audiobook at the dog park this morning, or at the lake. I was walking with Ross, and so I didn't get to listen because we were out on the highway. It's not a highway, just a road, paved road where we walk from one resort all the way up to another resort. And if we go all the way up and back, it's about 2.5 miles. To walk up there, hike down to the water, and then come back. So I would normally just put in my book on tape and gotten that done. But that didn't happen because we were chit-chatting, which is kind of nice. I don't usually get to walk with him because he's a runner. So I'm reading the Lola Quartet. And the reason that I downloaded that book right away was because, I might have talked about this on the podcast, the gal who, Anne with an E, who does the What Should I Read Next podcast, is one of my favorite podcasts, where she does that. Tell me 3 books you love, 1 book you hate, and what you're reading now. And I will recommend 3 books to you. I've always wanted to do that with knitting. But she started a new podcast called One Book, and the Lola Quartet was one of her 1 great books. So I decided to download it. I'm about halfway through. I'm really enjoying it. I just thought that I would get it finished a little bit sooner. I had finished the Beautiful Runes book last time, and had several people reach out and said that they had also listened to that or read that and enjoyed it, the one by Jess Walters. But out on the audiobooks thread in our Ravelry group, several people made recommendations that sounded really good. So Starwood Knitter recommends Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek, and she has a little review recommendation out there. Victoria on Ravelry recommends The Dispatcher by John Scalzi, and she has a big review of this book. She says it's intense, it's scary, it's one of the fastest reads she ever had because she couldn't put it down. So if you like those kinds of books, I think she said if you enjoy like Stephen King and somebody else, she recommends that The Dispatcher, and she said she will read the narrator was amazing, she said. So that's always fun when you find a good narrator. Then you want to listen to anything that they narrate. Okay. And then Knitting Kathy recommended Tana French's Dublin Murder Squad series, which I've heard of, but I've never started. She said you can listen to them in any order. It didn't matter. So those 3 recommendations are out on the Ravelry audiobooks thread. So if you are a reader or an audiobook listener and want to find out some more information, go check out that thread because I did this week, and I thought it was pretty interesting. I just I add them to my wish list, and it just grows and grows and grows. So sometimes I wonder, oh my gosh, where am I getting all the books? Where am I going to get all these books read? Okay, I am going to finish today with just a little bit of chat about design and designing, and then I have a Corey stories at the end that you may or may not want to opt in or out of. Okay. One of the things that I have been gathering together are some resources for designers, people who want to get into designing, start designing, or just kind of are interested in the process but never want to design a thing themselves. And I found a couple of really good resources. So I'm gonna just chat with you about this one. how to help a designer, which I thought was a kind of a neat headline. Buy a pattern, maybe every month. Maybe you won't knit it. Maybe you just like it. You have lots of yarn for just that reason. Be willing to pay for a pattern that might be slightly more expensive. Gift a pattern. Racks are awesome. Tell a friend you appreciate them. Give a birthday pattern. Mark your favorite patterns as giftable. Post a photo of the pattern even. Hashtag the designer. Repost a photo just saying, I like this pattern or designer. Queue a pattern. Placing it in your queue helps it be seen by others, even just your friends on Ravelry. Favorite a pattern. Hearts below a pattern photo help others choose it. Do a cal with a friend or a group of friends. Pick a designer and everyone show the love. Be a test or sample knitter. Post projects on Ravelry. Don't share patterns. Hashtag the designer's name. I thought that was a great list, right? I thought, wow, there's a lot of ways you can help a designer out that you wouldn't even have thought of. So I shared that. Then Andrea from Dre Renee Knits posted a thing on Instagram that I printed, which I thought was very interesting. Just to clarify, she says, it is never okay to give away a designer's patterns for free without their permission. Not only are you violating their copyright, you are also completely disrespecting them as a business owner, artist, and person. My patterns support my family. You may not think it is a big deal, but as someone who works incredibly hard and only charges dollars for their work, it is a very big deal. My knitting group will not do this anymore. They will not share patterns, not in my presence, because I feel strongly about that. I spend more getting a soda fountain pop from the gas station after the dog park in the morning because it makes me happy than I have paid for some patterns, right? And so I don't know what the problem is with not being willing to pay for the pattern, but I have had legitimately people in a yarn store share a pattern in front of me while I was sitting right there and say, I'll just make you a copy. It's just so sad. It makes me so sad. It might not have been my pattern, but I think, there's someone out there who spent time and energy to do that. So I printed that. And then Tracy of the Grocery Girls printed out a thing saying, respect the designer, buy the pattern, costs pennies to make, take minutes to prepare, is gone forever after one use. That's the coffee thing, right? So costs pennies to make, takes minutes to prepare, is gone forever after one use for your cup of coffee that you pay for. Then for the pattern designer, costs money to design, took countless hours to create, and can be used over and over again and lasts a lifetime. It's just a different way of looking at things, right? And as a designer, I just thought I should step up and say and make a statement. So I am. There's my little moment. That's always a little hard for me. Did everybody see the New York Times magazine had an article on knitting? I can't even tell you how many people sent it to me. It's called The Ins and Outs of Knit Theory, and it's about a physicist who is doing knitting as coding. It came out on May 17th, 2019. You can find it on the New York Times webpage. Here is the information that you might need. The ins and outs of knit theory. There's the author, came out of Boston. It was a fascinating article. A little over my head in a couple parts when she started talking a lot of math, but it was shared everywhere. But I thought if you didn't see it, it's a nice, especially if you're a math person or physics person, to read her theories about knitting and coding and the background of that, it was really a neat article to read. So I just wanted to share that with all of you. Okay, what else do I have today? Okay, the next thing that I have to share with you today is a design, ironically. that I had just come out in a kit form with Jeanette of Sun Valley Fibers and Java Jenny of Kitchen Counter Crafter, and it is going to be distributed at the Zombie Knitpocalypse Knitting Retreat in Rochester, Minnesota in like the 3rd weekend in June. But that doesn't mean you can't get one if you want one. So it was a themed kit based on flying or a kite, and the theme of ZK this year. So Jeanette and Jenny got together, and Jeanette made yarn and Jenny purchased fabric, and then they asked me to design something with it. So the kit will be available at ZK because that's when the first people get it, and then everybody else's will be shipped then. But they're for sale right now, which is why I'm bringing this up. Long way around. I don't know why that was hard for me to get out to you, but Jenny found some really cute fabric. The pictures are out on down here. There's the bag. Isn't it cute? Really pretty. And then here's the yarn up here. She's got mini skeins because you get a skein of yarn and a mini. And then there is the pattern. And it's called Friends in Flight. It's based on a quote kind of that I found that I put on the pattern about kites that fly together but then run back when somebody's in trouble, like a friend in need. So we use that a little bit. And my pattern, which will be available just as an individual download after the retreat, is called the Kite Tail Shawl. And basically what it is a long rectangle with a tail on it, and then across the top it has some I-cord loops that you run the tail through in order to wear it. So I will show you. Here is the design. So that's the top edge. Can you see those loops there? See them? Not hard to make. And then if you start at this end, here's your kite tail. So you've got this, you're doing an I-cord edge on both sides, slipping some stitches, and then you get a little pattern of the bottom half of a kite, and then you do some more stockinette and you get another little pattern, and then you do some more stockinette and you do it one more time, and then you get this little bit at the top. And there are pictures of my model out on Ravelry that I will be posting in the next few days. The pattern will go visually live, but not be available until the retreat. So I'm kind of playing with how much time it should sit out there, because I don't like people to look at it and go, oh, I can't buy it now. So anyway, I have it in several colors. So here's the original prototype. You're all gonna laugh. With orange. I did it in orange, the whole thing. And the loops were a little big, and it got a little wide at the top, so I narrowed out the kite tail bottom. Here it is done in a blue and a gray. If you are a blue and a kind of a brownie gray to match. See? And then this one is done the green that coordinates, and that's pretty. That's kind of speckly all over speckle. And then you use so you need a skein of fingering weight yarn and a mini skein basically to knit the shawl, and then you wrap it around your neck and weave the ends through. Here, I'll just put one on. You can fold it in half. This is the quickest way to do it. You can fold the top in half and weave it through, because then it doesn't hang down as far. But you just weave that tail that you knit, and you don't have to put the tail is optional. So you can also just weave the end, the skinny part of the triangle, through the loops down at the bottom of that end of the shawl. That goes through too if you don't want to have I liked the tail concept because you can, when you get to the end, when you stick it through, you can put it through again to anchor it. So it kind of, see how it kind of, there you go. And then you can put it on. Okay, I took my sweater off and then I put this on. I got it kind of all situated. It just wraps around your shoulders, and then this is just strung through there, and you can bring it up and wear it around your neck as as a cowl, and then I realized I did the whole thing with the sample color in the blue and not the color of the kit. Anyway, if you're coming to ZK, you can purchase yarn from Jeanette in her booth and just buy the pattern individually. But if you would like the kit, they are available. Half of them are available on Jeanette Sun Valley Fibers website, and half of them are available on the Kitchen Counter Crafter website. I think they made 30 kits total, so there weren't a lot. But you could get yarn from Jeanette and the pattern separately if you didn't want to. And there will also be some prize little goodies in there. So I think Jenny made matching stitch markers, and I think Jeanette's putting a little goodie in there as well. So you get a whole kind of package deal that will be delivered at ZK and then mailed out to those of you that aren't going after that. So it was kind of a fun thing to design. It's kind of a kitschy. There's Joanna in the shawl, wrapped over one shoulder with the kite. It's my lovely Joanna, who is an engineer. There it is again. And then there it is again. So there are a bunch of, we took a bunch of pictures in different iterations. So it could also work as a cape for a child because it's a long, narrow thing that they can wrap over their shoulders, and with the loops on either shoulder, they could have ties and they could just wrap it, and it could do dual purpose. If you were on a desperate rainy day and didn't know how to make a superhero costume really fast, could work for little boys and little girls everywhere. We took a picture that way, and then it looked kind of silly on Joanna, but she was trying to rock it. We took this picture with her hanging it on her back like it was a cape, a superhero cape. You know, when you're out there in the park and people are watching you and you're having pictures taken, you have to be really willing to go for it. So I have a bit of a tip or trick for you today. One of the things that we often talk about is how to get more knitting done and how to make more projects. And so the tip today that I was talking to a beginner knitter about last week, which I thought, oh, maybe people don't say this out loud, was don't put your knitting away. Don't tuck it away. Don't put it in its bag, under the chair, behind the chair, in the coffee table, next to your bed, whatever. Don't put it away. It takes more energy and time and thoughtfulness to get it back out than if you just leave it out. You're much more likely to pick it up and do a few stitches if you've left it out. So although it's a bit of a mess, don't tuck your knitting away. Don't clean it up. Leave it out next to the chair, in the kitchen, wherever, so that it's easily accessible and you can do a few stitches every time you walk by, or when you're on the phone, or when you sit down in the evening and you don't think, oh, I don't want to get it out, right? And then I have a picture here at the end that I'm going to share. Last year in June, at the end of June, I had my knee replaced. Many of you know that. And at the Zombie Knitpocalypse retreat, a friend of mine did a little collection of money as a gift for me. And people wrote notes and put together a little card, and my husband and I decided to plant a tree in the yard. Kind of a memory, memorial, kind of a special thing to always remember friends, right, around you, who gather around you and lift you up when you might be scared and you need lifting up. So I went out today and the tree is blooming, and it's just really special to pull out the driveway every day and see it there. So I'm going to put a picture in at the end of the tree and a close-up of the shot of some of the beautiful pink buds and flowers that are starting to come out right now, because it's just a really special thing. So thank you if you were one of those people at ZK last year, but also thank all of you who have become friends. So I'm going to end today with a Corey story, and this may or may not be of interest to some of you. It has nothing to do with knitting, but it is something that I kind of wanted to share about my daughter and the process of applying for law school. So if you have anyone in your life who someday may go through that kind of process, whatever it may be, to go to a graduate school or apply even to college, I think it was just an interesting thing. So I'm gonna tell you about it. My daughter Kylie decided to try to get into law school probably a couple of years ago. She was into her undergraduate work, and she kind of had known she was a speech and debate kid in high school. And my husband and I were kind of weary or leery. We were kind of leery of the process of trying to apply to law school and how that works if you've never gone through that. Didn't really know how to navigate it. And weirdly, and I have a whole belief system in this, that your phone listens to you a little bit and it knows things that you are looking up. And so I had Googled the LSAT test date on my phone to find out when the test date would happen, which would have been a year ago, last June. And then in my Facebook and my Instagram ads, I was getting promotions for a woman who was a paid mentor to help students navigate that process. So I said to my husband and my daughter at dinner one night, ironically, my phone's been listening to me again, and I got this weird, ad, but I think it sounds really, interesting. So this woman, Anne, who has a company, she's a lawyer, and her husband, they live in California. She was a law school admissions advisor. And so she was willing to help navigate the process of all the things you have to do to get into law school, right? Because where to apply to law school? How do you choose amongst all the law schools? It's just like when you're choosing to apply to college. How do you choose which college you should apply to? If it wasn't for a conversation that I had with one of Kylie's friends' mothers, we would not have been aware of Grinnell College in Iowa that Kylie went to, which was a perfect fit for her. But it would not have been on our radar. She started working with Kylie in August, and she literally spoke with her or emailed with her every week. And she gave Kylie immediately, in the first week or so of them chatting, a calendar of this is what you have to get done when. And that took all of the onerousness off of Ross and I. We never had to call and say when, how much, any of that, because Anne just navigated that with Kylie. She had all the deadlines set out. This is another LSAT test date. This is a great prep class. These are my top 3 prep classes. These are some books you can get to study from. This is when we're going to write your essays. This is when we're going to do your resume, right? Because all those things have to be done. And the kids are in school. They're still seniors in college. So they're still super busy, which is why a lot of kids have to take that year off after college to do the application, because it's so much work, and the prepping for the LSAT is such a huge piece of that. So Anne really took the reins away from us on that, and we didn't have to worry about it. So Kylie wrote 2 essays in the fall, and then she and Anne worked together. Anne picked the one that she thought presented Kylie better, and then they worked through making that a great essay. And then they worked on Kylie's resume, and then you also have to do a personal statement. And Kylie wanted to make sure that the things that she did in college that were different than what other kids did, like Kylie didn't get a degree in political science or history, which is what a lot of kids that are going into law school do. And so she wanted to highlight some of those things that made her maybe different than some other. Also coaches speech at the high school. She does it online via Facebook and Skype. The kids at 3:30 in the afternoon go to practice, and they set up a camera, and Kylie sits in her dorm room and watches them, and then she critiques them, and then they do it again, and then she does it again. So It was a great gig for her to be able to do that when she's away. And then she could meet them at tournaments and judge and that kind of thing. So there were some things that Kylie was doing that were kind of interesting that Anne felt we should highlight. And then she and Anne spent quite a bit of time narrowing down what Kylie wanted in a law school. And they ended up picking 13 schools. And Kylie was going to apply to 13 schools, which there's an application fee that goes with applying to law school, right? It can be anywhere from $50 to $250. Well, that's a ton of money. And Anne told Kylie that a lot of schools will waive that fee if you just ask them. Another thing we would not have known. Kylie wrote to the schools and said, I'm applying to a lot of colleges. Will you waive your fee or lower your fee? And they did. So, you know, that was something that we would never have heard of. So we wouldn't have found out about the LSAT prep course. Kylie applied to 13. The numbers are fuzzy because she did this all with Anne, but I think she got in to 10, and I think she got full ride scholarships at 6 or 7. That would not have happened, I don't think, if we would have been navigating that process. Kylie had read in some books that don't go to law school if you're paying for it, because there's kind of a glut of lawyers. It's hard to pay back giant debt like that, especially if you've incurred undergraduate debt. So the name of Anne's company is lawschoolexpert.com, and her name is Anne Levine. And the process was just made so much more manageable by her help and her mentorship of Kylie throughout. So I have just been telling everybody I know that has kids that might know kids that are looking for help, because although this story doesn't really have a lot to do with knitting and it's not hilariously funny, I just felt that I wanted to tell it somehow to a larger audience so that maybe someone else could learn from our experience and how positive it was for us. Kylie has chosen to go to Mitchell Hamlin School of Law in St. Paul, and she will be a fellow. So there will be a small group of students that she will be working with. So we're just thrilled. She'll be over in the beautiful Grand Avenue area of St. Paul, which is just so nice. It's just a great little area and community. There's a great yarn store over there, and some neat shops and places to eat. And so now we're going to start looking for apartments. She's going to get a summer job. She has an interview on Wednesday, and we're going to start looking for places for her to live in St. Paul next fall. But I just thought it was a good time to talk about it, in case there was anyone out there who was struggling with some of those processes that are really hard to negotiate if you've never been through them before and you don't have some of that underground knowledge that we don't have. Anyway, I hope you had a lovely Memorial Day weekend wherever you reside. I hope you paid a little bit of tribute wherever you was. In our neighborhood, someone every year brings around little 10 by 12 flags and puts them at the bottom of everyone's driveway every Memorial Day. And it's just really special to drive out the neighborhood and have all those flags kind of showing some respect. It's kind of neat. So until next time, let's keep it colorful and waddle on.